All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad you're here for episode 3 of our webinar series. I'm Ellie, and today we're closing out the arc with what I think is the most practical episode yet. If you were with us in episodes 1 and 2, you know we've covered why retention expands your customer base and how stored value and paid memberships lock in commitment. But today we're answering the bigger question. Underneath all of that, how do you build a brand presence so strong that customers think about even when they're not buying? So the title today is Building Brand Presence Through Retention. And by the end of this session, you're going to have the framework for doing exactly that. Just a quick orientation for anyone who's newer to Eber. Everything we talk about today maps to one or more of our 5 core solution areas: loyalty, marketing, messaging, platform, and commerce. I mentioned this upfront because the 6 frameworks we're covering aren't theoretical. Each one is something you can actually implement and will make these connections on the go. So today's content is drawn from our Consumer Loyalty in APAC 2026 report, Retention is the New Revenue. I want to start with a line that hits home for a lot of business owners that we've shared in the last month. You didn't lose that customer to a competitor, you just stopped showing up. The real churn problem for most brands isn't competition, it's invisibility. Your customers didn't make a decision to leave, they just drifted. And by the time they were at a competitor, you'd already been gone from their mental radar for weeks. Now, if you've tried to solve this before, you've probably reached for one of these 3 familiar tools. Number 1, promotions. Well, they spike traffic, but the moment the offer ends, customers leave and you've trained them to wait for the next deal. The second thing that we've seen is using paid acquisition, but with Meta CPL upping 21% year over year and Google CPL upping 24%, it's getting more and more expensive, and none of it solves the retention problem. You're actually filling up a leaky bucket. So the third one that we're seeing more businesses come into the market with is gamification. But this one surprises people because standalone gamification typically drops off within 2 to 4 weeks. Why? Because it relies on intrinsic motivation. Badges, points, streaks, but without anything underneath them. And you need to keep escalating to keep people interested. But here's the common thread. All 3 of these wait for something to go wrong. None of them keep you present in between. And that's the gap we're going to address. In episode 1, we asked a simple but uncomfortable question. Between purchases, does your customers interact with your brand at all? For a lot of businesses in the room, the honest answer is no. And there's a transaction, silence after then, and then either another transaction or nothing at all. Now, we've identified the 6 presence systems that the strongest retention-led brands in APAC run. And with this, you can see they are routine, utility, identity, community, emotional memory, and ecosystem. One important note before we dive in, gamification is one mechanic that can live inside these systems, but gamification in itself is not a present system. That's why standalone gamification fades. It needs something to be embedded in. Before we go deeper, I want to ask, which of these 6 systems does your brand currently run? Most businesses run about 1 to 2 of these well and leave the rest to chance. And it's actually really exciting because the growth lives in the gaps. So keep those gaps in mind as we go through each system. System 1, routine, making returning feel automatic. The insight here is this: retention is the strongest when the behavior is frequent, the effort is low, and the routine is predictable. You want customers to stop asking, "Where should I go?" and have the answer just be your brand automatically. And there's a good heuristic here. Daily coffee beats yearly luxury in retention power. But because frequency builds default behavior and spend size doesn't. And here's a real example. A bubble tea chain found their top 20% of members already visited 3 times a week naturally. No incentive needed. So instead of launching a new promotion, they built a streak mechanic, 5 visits in 7 days. and you earn a free drink. If you think about it, the streak did not create the habit. It amplified one that already existed and made customers conscious of it. Visit frequency in that segment then went from 3 times to 4 per week. So the question for you is, what's the natural frequency of your best customers? And you can just design your mechanic above that. The question here is, how often do your best customers already visit you without any incentives? Take the top 10% of your customers and that number is your baseline. Your streak, your stamp cards, and your habit mechanic should just sit above that, not try to double it just on the get-go. Utility. Being able to stay present and useful between your customers' purchases. Now, this is where Eber's full platform comes in. Every solution we offer is a presence touch point, not just a transaction tool. So your loyalty program here, which is your points, stamps, and tiers, keeps your members engaged even when no promotion is running. Your referral and feedback tools create touch points between visits that feel natural, not pushy. Smart messaging, triggered by behavior, reaches your customers at the right moment rather than just when you want to sell. Your CRM then gives you a 360-degree view so that every interaction can be as personalized as you want. And in-store commerce helps you drive incremental revenue from members who already trust you. And last but not least, gamification such as spin and win, missions, and check-ins keeps your brand on a customer's phone between purchase cycles. So your question here is, are you giving your customers a reason to open your app or think about your brand when they're not actively shopping? If not, utility will be your gap. It's for any brand where customers think of themselves as a regular, and that's everywhere in APAC, F&B, and even retail. Think about someone who says, I'm a chaji person. That's not just a drink preference, that's a daily signal, an identity marker, if you will. When customers say they always go somewhere, that's actually identity at work. Or when a family says, we always go to Putian for family dinners, the brand has become the default for a specific occasion. So you don't need to be aspirational to achieve that. You just need to own a moment. So even a supermarket can hold identity, for example. Staff recognition, consistent experience, all reinforce this is my store. So the question here is, what occasion, moment, or feeling does your brand own in your customer's week? Now, we want to talk about community and referrals as well. How do you make loyalty social and referrals used as a presence engine? Here's a number worth sitting on. 68.5% of APAC consumers already refer brands socially without a formal program. They're already doing it, but the problem is how most brands use referral programs. It's an acquisition tool. Get a friend, earn points, campaign ends, and referrals stop. The referrer forgets about it, and you captured one transaction from the referral social network and let it go cold. But here's the shift you can start to think about. Referrals as your presence system. When someone refers your brand, they've publicly claimed it anyways. They've told someone they care about, you should go there. And that deepens their own loyalty, not just their friends. So you should start thinking about how to design an ongoing social participation. A wellness studio we've worked with added a Bring a Friend This Month challenge with shared rewards. So 22% of their active members referred at least one person, and referred members had a 40% higher 90-day retention than paid acquired members. So that's the difference between referral as acquisition and referral as a community. Now, System 5 speaks about emotional memory, being remembered, not just used. Now, what we really want to talk about is timing. This one is about timing as much as it is about gesture. A gesture without timing is just a nice touch, right? And a gesture at the right moment then becomes a memory. And timing is what separates transactional to emotional. Let me walk through some of the best moments that you can think about. So first we have the first visit anniversary. So a first visit anniversary could be coupled with a message such as happy 1 year with us, plus a surprise reward, which then turns a data point into a shared story. We see about 68% open rates and 34% redemption on these. The second one that we can think about is birthday messages. So birthday messages work, but only when they feel personal enough rather than automated. A personalized treat in birthday month has the highest emotional recall of any single loyalty touchpoint that we've tracked. The third touch point that we can think of is a post-milestone message. It reactivates pride and commitment. The last but not least is a post-recovery message, something such as a warm "we missed you" message after a 30-day lapse or however duration of period that you want to set for your brand, right? Intervenes before your customer mentally churns, and it usually gets a win-back rate for about 35 to 45% versus any cold outreach that we've seen. And the reason why this works so well is because people forget discounts, but people always remember moments. So design both the moment and the timing to get this right. I want to take this a step further and ask you, what's the moment in your customer journey that people can actually talk about? So I think this is such a great exercise because if you can't name it, then that's usually the gap. And if you can name it, that's great. And how are you amplifying it? Is it consistent? Does your team know it's the moment? And how can you even scale it to a bigger crowd? Now, I want to come back to gamification here because I know a lot of you are either running it or considering it. Now, I want to shine light on what the difference is between standalone gamification that we've talked about earlier and gamification inside a presence system. The shift here is to put gamification within a presence system. This looks like spin and win tied to visit streaks that drives routine, referral rewards that becomes a social presence engine, not just acquisition, gamified feedback such as reviews and polls, which then deepens identity, and progress missions that creates habit loops, behavior-based points that lets your customers earn on non-spend actions that builds also daily touch points. So the result here that you're expecting is engagement that compounds over time, not just spikes and drops. So Eber's marketing suite, referrals, gamification, and feedback is built to connect these mechanics into a single presence system, and that's what makes it sustainable. The winning brands in APAC have stopped operating as single transactions. As we all know, the more context a customer interacts with your brand, the harder it becomes to disappear from their routine. So every new touch point is another reason they can't forget you and another barrier to switching. So here's a case that illustrates this pretty well. A multi-brand F&B group, 3 brands, a casual dining, bakery, and bubble tea, all launched a shared loyalty wallet. Points earned at one brand could be spent at another. So cross-brand visit rate went from 18% to a whopping 41% within just 6 months. So customers who engage with 2 or more brands had 2 to 3 times the annual spend of single brand members. So you see this pattern across APAC. In retail groups like Hexstar, in mall ecosystems, in fitness plus cafe plus retail combinations, in wellness ecosystems. So the brands that win are expanding their surface area, so there are more ways for customers to stay connected. Now, before you start building, take stock of where you are. Like mentioned just now, most brands will find that they run 1 or 2 well, usually routine and some version of utility. The rest are gaps, but what I like to call it is opportunity because that's where your growth is. Episode 1 talks about training the habit, streaks, frequency, mechanics, and why retention expands your customer base. Episode 2 was about capturing that commitment, stored value, paid membership, and how to lock in spend before that decision point. And episode 3, which is today, is about owning the presence, routine, identity, ecosystem, emotional memory, the full system. So the brands that win don't just retain customers, they become part of their life. So you've seen the strategy. Now let's talk about building it. 2 things I want you to do after today. First, download the full Consumer Loyalty in APAC 2026 report. It's got the full data behind every episode, all 6 present system frameworks, operator playbooks broken down by business types as well as regions, and a full mapping of how Eber's platform capabilities support each one. Scan the QR code to download. Second, if any part of today resonated and you want to think through how it applies to your specific business, book a free strategy call with our team. We'll map your present system together, look at where your gaps are, and figure out the 1 or 2 things that will move the needle most for you. Now, to everyone who joined us across all 3 episodes, thank you. It's been a genuine pleasure putting this series together. And if there's one thing I want you to take away today, it's this. Presence is a system, your winning system, not a campaign. You don't need to build all 6 systems at once, but pick the gap that costs you the most right now. Maybe it's routine, maybe it's emotional memory, and build one thing well. We'll be sticking around, and you can catch us on our socials at LinkedIn, Facebook, or even Instagram. And for anyone who wants to keep the conversation going, you know where to find us at hello@eber.co. Thanks so much, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.